Welcome live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you for tuning in. This, of course, is the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's get straight into those stories. First up, the police in Mpumalanga confirmed the arrest of 2 more suspects linked to the murder of Hillary Gardee. The building that used to belong to Daily Dispatch has allegedly been set alight. Mlibo Oboshiane joins the Babalo Madikezana faction as the court throws out the attempt to block the participation of branches from the Dr. W.B. Kubusana region over membership issues. Right, our top story at the Sawa. Police in Mpumalanga have confirmed arresting 2 more suspects linked to the murder of Hillary Gardee. This brings the number of 3 suspects being arrested, comes after the police arrested 39-year-old man on Friday. Now, police in Mpumalanga have confirmed to arresting 2 more witnesses linked to the murder of Hillary Gardee. Let's take a look.
There are 2 more suspects that have been arrested. Their ages is 47 and 52. They are facing a charge of murder with regard to Ms. Hillary Gardee's case. So they have been arrested between midnight Saturday and this morning. So they've been arrested in Nelspruit or Mbombela. So they will be joining the 39-year-old that was arrested on Friday. So what we can say as the police is that we urge the public as well as the media to also give us a space as much as we can. We'll try to make sure that the information that we receive will communicate when there is a need. But currently the investigation is continuing, where we expect more suspects to be arrested. For now, because we don't want to jeopardize the investigation, but yes, indeed, there are other suspects that we are following. It's just that sometimes when, for instance, you take in someone for questioning where you will want to get more information that will assist in the investigation, then it happens that some people will be seeing that, then they go and indicate that no, police have already arrested, which is not working in our favor. So that's why I indicate that please let them assist us by giving us the space. However, we cannot indicate the exact number because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, each and every person that has got a hand in the murder case of Ms. Hillary Gardee is put behind bars. So sometimes, remember also on Friday, the guy that we arrested in Skomazal, if you check, our province is not far from, we are neighboring 2 countries, which is Mozambique and Swaziland. So the more information that we reveal might actually work against us, where you'll find that at the end of the day, we'll be pursuing someone and you find that they've crossed the border somehow. So please, that's why we say we urge them to give us a space. So, and those arrested suspects, the 3, will appear before the Nelspruit Magistrate Court on Monday.
Right now, the ANC's Youth League Limpopo Elective Conference has collapsed due to disputes over the credentials of some of the delegates. The conference, which started on Friday with the registration process, has now been unable to have its opening ceremony with the party's provincial chairperson, and Limpopo Premier Stanley Matabata has scheduled to deliver an address. SABC News reporter Pimani Baloy has more on that story.
We are here in Mokopane, Limpopo, where the ANC Youth League in the province was holding its elective conference to elect the top 5 leadership of the Youth League in the province, as well as additional members. Last night at about 10 p.m, we learned that the conference had collapsed due to some disputes about the credentials of some delegates, specifically from 3 regions in Vembe. What we gather is that there were disputes over 2 lists that had been submitted by that region, where it's been said said that the regional chairperson and the regional secretary were both saying so both lists were valid. But to speak more about this, I'm going to be joined by the spokesperson of the committee that is responsible for running this conference, Mr. Dan Matibana. Mr. Matibana, yesterday, on Friday, your conference started and registration went ahead. I understand by yesterday, registration wasn't complete. But last night, you made an announcement that the conference could not go ahead. What happened?
In normal circumstances, when you have provincial congress or congresses in the movement, you will have the committee or the PC to sit to adopt political report, organizational report, financial report, and most importantly credentials. So we had that meeting to adopt the report so that we could start the Congress. All reports were adopted. When we arrived at the credentials, we have realized that the delegates that were supposed to be registered from a Vembe region, particularly in 3 sub-regions, they were questioned, where the regional secretary submitted a particular list and the regional chairperson that the list that we got from a regional secretary was not the correct list. And for us to know who's the correct list, it means we should open the packages and check who's the right person to participate. But however, remember, those who are in the Provincial Congress Preparatory Committee are people with vested interest who will not have the right to open. So we have decided that for us to avoid issue of court, so that those who can contest and lose the Congress will take us to court, there is a need for us to postpone this Congress so that we deal with this issue and we give young people of Limpopo a credible Congress.
So what's the way forward now? We're going to have another date when, what?
The Provincial Congress Preparatory Committee agreed that they will meet on Tuesday. And our meeting on Tuesday will primarily deal with the issue of credentials, because all issues relating to this Congress in terms of all other reports were adopted. The only issue that is remaining is credential. We have agreed with the regional chairperson and regional secretaries that on Monday they must go and observe. There must be an election committee, obviously getting guidance from the national leadership in terms of verifying all those things. We have done this. We have taken this painful decision, understanding that there were cost implications of all these things. But at the end of the day, we should not rush in terms of giving young people a credible Congress. And we understood when we took this responsibility to be part of the Provincial Congress Preparatory Committee that the road will not be easy. But at the ultimate end, we will provide a Congress. And we are not going to provide a Congress for young people for the sake of providing a Congress. We are going to make sure that in our approach we are very meticulous.
Talking about providing a Congress, the ANC in the province is expected to have an elective conference in June next month. Do you think you'll be able to have this Congress prior to that? And what would be the implications if you like, in terms of the time frames, what would be the implications if you are unable to have a conference prior to the provincial one?
I will not say we are going to have a Congress prior to the Congress of the ANC or after, because we are still going to meet on Tuesday. Remember, I'm not the provincial spokesperson of myself. I'm the provincial spokesperson of the ANC Youth League. Whatever that I say, it must be the decision of the collective. So standing here before you, I don't represent my view. I represent the view of the collective. As to when we are going to sit before, after the ANC Congress is going to be determined by the decision that is going to be taken by the collective.
There are allegations that the reason this decision to postpone was made is because certain leaders in the party, the mother body in the province, saw that numbers were not in their favor in terms of the people that were contesting the positions. What would be your response to this allegation?
This ANC Youth League will not allow it to be the ANC Youth League that is have people, or that is dominated by people who cannot think on their own. We are not going to be a homogeneous organization of non-thinkers. With their different preferences, young people that are here, they elected leadership on their own in the branches, and we are confident that the young people that are here, they are going to elect leadership they want. The preferences that are here are not determined by any leader of the ANC, and we don't know those. And if there is any leader of the ANC who think is going to dictate delegate this thing, they must understand that it will never happen. We have young people that are robust, young people that are ready, that they are going to take their own space in the ANC Youth League. But if there are those who think they can do those things, it will not happen, not in our lifetime.
Thank you so much, Mr. Madivana. That's the spokesperson of the Provincial Congress Preparatory Committee that has been tasked with ensuring that there is an elective conference here in Limpopo going ahead, who says they know that there could be hefty court costs if they still went ahead with the Congress, even though there was a dispute over the delegates that were forwarded from 3 sub-regions in Wembe. For now, we'll hand back to you in studio.
Right. In other stories making headlines this week, the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Hlophe, is calling for the 8th of May to be declared National Ancestors Day. The official inauguration of Ancestors Day was held at the Matibela Royal Palace in Mpumalanga on the 8th of May 2021. Who's joining us from the Cradle of Humankind is Zolani Mkiva, Secretary General of Hlophe, for more on this. Good afternoon, Zolani. Thank you for joining us here on The Week Ahead.
Good afternoon to you, Lizel, and happy Ancestors Day to you, as well as the listeners and the citizens of South Africa and the African continent.
Well, let's get straight into it then and contextualize this for those who obviously are not privy to what you're calling for. Since the launch of Ancestors Day, what conversations around this day are currently taking place?
There are quite a number of conversations that are happening amongst the key stakeholders in our society. From the institutional traditional leadership, spiritual people in the religious like business, as well as the ordinary community members are conversing about this. And this really points to an issue. How do we express our pride as a people? How do we begin to redefine a citizen of a South African society and African society at large? How do we begin to bring to the fore the indigenous knowledge and the African wisdom? So it is a conversation that talks about the change of the mindset. It is a conversation that talks about the re-education of society to instill a sense of patriotism amongst our own people, to begin to appreciate the wealth that we have in terms of the natural resources, as well as the nature in general. So it is quite a very deep conversation that is taking and has come on how we must begin to embrace our integrity as well as our ethic leadership and servant leadership.
All right, Zolani, since the inauguration, or the official inauguration was held at the Royal Palace in Mpumalanga last year, I wonder what has been the response around this issue from different communities that you have engaged in to date. I also wonder if you could perhaps just, move to an area where it's less windy. I do think that is coming through as we're speaking. So perhaps as you move around, let me ask you that question just based on the response from people at large. What have they, said? What are the communities echoing since you've engaged with them, if at all, at this point?
Well, the response has been very great and been very encouraging. People are actually very supportive, and we have seen people from across the length and breadth of our country expressing their appreciation, not only on the social media, but also at the grassroots level in terms of our structures, our traditional councils, our traditional, but not only in rural areas, but even in urban and peri-urban areas. This is a new revolution, a new spiritual revolution, a new cultural revolution, where people are taking their rightful space in society and are beginning to say it is important that we embrace that which is us, and it is important that we are proud of who we are as a people, and it is important that we connect with those who came before us in order for us to be able to have the blessings that we require, in order for us to also draw strength and motivation so that we can actually defeat some of the challenges that we have as a people, so that we can find a way forward in a number of fronts where we are found wanting. It's really been encouraging, and there's a groundswell as I speak with you, there are multitudes of people here at the Cradle of Humankind, which is one of the hollow spots which we have in this country, which is a point of privilege because we're told this is where humanity began. And therefore, it is important as a country that we must not shy away from a position of responsibility to say that there is actually nothing wrong with our culture. Just as our culture was demonized and looked down upon, we can now begin to explore our culture fully and begin to draw some lessons. And the winning formula for us is when we embrace that culture and take everything that is positive out of it and begin to mainstream it in the public discourse so that it can find expression in the policy making, in the lawmaking, as well as the programs that we require in order to alleviate a number of challenges that we face as a society.
All right, Zolani, your connection is quite bad. I'm going to ask you the final question in hopes that you can hear me and you can respond. Obviously, there have been talks about this day, needing to be declared a holiday. Where are you with the process? Obviously, also seen that with you wanting it to be declared a public holiday, there are other holidays such as Mandela Day, which happens on his birthday, that is internationally recognized, but obviously isn't a public holiday. You've also got the period of Kwanzaa, which is observed during December, coincides with the Gregorian calendar during the period of Christmas. So I just wonder if you could walk us through that process in conclusion.
Well, you see, for this day, for it to be recognized as a public holiday, that should be a culmination of these engagements that were involved in, including engaging government. But I think fundamentally, the first point of engagement is to ensure that this initiative is owned by all South Africans. And once South Africans have fully owned this thing, then the government will do the obvious thing. Remember that government is a government of the people. If people are making a point and that point is compelling, then the government simply implements what the people require. And this day, the Ancestors' Day, cannot be compared to any other day because it talks to the collective nation and the honor that we want to give to our ancestors. And therefore, I don't think we should do an unfair comparison and compare it to other days. But it also talks to the transformation of the calendar of this country to be fully an African calendar in terms of what we mainstream. You can't compare it to an international day. An international day, it defines something that is embraced by the entire humanity. And the African Ancestors' Day is a day dedicated to the African ancestors, and it's being dedicated by this current generation because we felt that we have negated our ancestors for too long. And we thought that it is important that as we take another step towards the total emancipation of our people and our continent, it is important that we make that reflection and honor our ancestors so that we can actually enjoy their blessings and their support as we seek to find a way forward towards that destiny that we have defined for ourselves.
All right, let's leave the conversation there, Zolani. I want to thank you very much for making time to join us here on the SABC. Again, from the Cradle of Humankind, Zolani Mkiva, Secretary General of Controlesa, giving us an update on the calls around surrounding Controlesa, calling for the 8th of May to be declared National Ancestors' Day. On to other news now. The building that previously belonged to Daily Dispatch is on fire, has allegedly been set on fire rather. The Daily Dispatch is a South African newspaper published in East London in the province of the Eastern Cape. Perhaps to give us more, our reporter Abungile Yankis has the latest. Good afternoon, Abungile. Thank you for joining us. Can you give us an update since you last spoke to the SABC? What is transpiring on your end? Do we know what the cause of the fire is at this point?
Well, at this stage, Lizel, we are not sure of what the cause of the fire is, but investigations continue and we shall get an update shortly. But if I may show you at the back that the fire has been totally extinguished. The firefighters just left moments ago. Well, the building has been described as a building with a rich history, particularly when it comes to the field of journalism. Well, they are saying that their investigation should ensue, and if there's anyone who's found wanting to be dealt with, Liesl. But to tell us more, I'm joined by the spokesperson of the Buffalo City Metro, Samkelo Ngwenya. A very good day to you, sir. Thanks for joining us. The building has caught fire. How far is your investigation?
Well, at this stage, from a Metro point of view, we're done with the containing of the fire. We are now going to hand over the site to the South African Police Service to do the investigation. In terms of what we've found, we will basically tell them that we did pick up that we suspect there could be some vagrants that may have been involved, because when we got here, we could see that there has been people living in the building. The building itself has been obviously not been occupied for a while. The owner did came and open for us, but of course it was a bit too late by then.
How rife is the issue of abandoned buildings in this metro, and them not being occupied? It creates a space for vagrants, and it leads to fires and endangering lives. But thankfully here, nothing of that nature happened.
Well, it's a huge challenge for us. Firstly, most owners don't tell us when they abandon these buildings, and people take occupation of them. But on a serious note, particularly with this one, I mean, the building itself has showed no signs of being dilapidated. It's been an intact building, and no one would suspect that the building was not being used. Hence, it's very important for us to advise people who own these buildings that are not occupying them to have security on site. So it's a huge challenge for us.
Mr. Ngwenya, you also, back in the days, you also cut your teeth here as a journalist, and what memories would you share with our viewers regarding this building?
Well, very sad. When we saw this morning on social media, it was touching for most of us as journalists. Some of the journalists, the icons that were through here, were sharing this from as far as across the entire country. I think that as that community of former journalists, we're very much devastated. We cut our teeth in here. I was inside here looking at the roof collapsed, our newsroom area. It's a shame, really. It's very, very sad for some of us. And the iconics that were here, the likes of Steve Biko, the Bonganis Kogos of this world, guys that went to big newspapers, guys that went, it's a very, very sad moment, really.
On a different matter, the ANC conference is currently underway here in East London. Surely hospitality, the economy of the metro has been boosted, because hospitality is hard to find, accommodation is hard to find. What are your numbers telling you with regards to this weekend pertaining to tourism?
Well, the business community is quite pleased. You must remember, they're coming from a very, very dark area in terms of the economy. So it's quite a reviving thing to actually have this type of setup in the beachfront area. It's not only the beachfront, all across the city, accommodation establishment books. Of course, the spin-offs, those are that are serving food in restaurant. So it's quite a big deal for us. We're watching the situation very closely, and from an economic point of view, if the conference extends for another day or two, I think we'll be smiling. Of course, I think it's very, very important for this city to keep having these type of events now that the economy has been open and the country is ready to function.
I thank you so much for your time, sir. Well, Liesl, that was Samkelo Ngwenya saying that they've handed over to the police now to continue with their investigation, and the case of arson is set to be opened. And he says that he is also a former journalist from the Daily Dispatch who worked in this building, and says it has also an emotional effect on him. Liesl?
Abungile, thank you very much. We'll leave the conversation there. Our reporter, Abungile Yankees, giving us the latest on what transpired after a building that previously belonged to Daily Dispatch was allegedly set on fire. Let's take a quick ad break. We continue with more news on the other side. You're watching The Week Ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. All right, welcome back. The Week Ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. In other news, on Wednesday, the Supreme Court of Appeal will be hearing an appeal against a 2019 ruling by the Equality Court in favor of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. The ruling determined that displays of the apartheid flag constituted hate speech, breaking new ground in legal understandings of the modes, forms and also limits of hate speech. But joining us for more on this is Vern Harris, Head of Leadership Development at the Nelson Mandela Foundation. For more, Vern, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
But let's get straight into it. As the Nelson Mandela Foundation, having an appeal on this ruling, what's your reaction? What does this mean for you as the organization?
Liesel, I think there are three principles that for us are fundamental here. The first one is that flag represents a crime against humanity. And it's important for us to hold people accountable who display that flag in ways that affirm what it represents. The second thing for us is that in our society today, hate speech has almost become an epidemic. And it's critical that we combat hate speech in all its forms. The last principle is that the ruling by the Equality Court established that hate speech is not only comprised of words, it can be in the form of symbols, of flags, of gestures. And for us, this is critical because if you think about social media, the space for hate speech has opened up hugely. So those are the three principles for us.
Vern, should the appeal not go the way of the foundation, what does this mean for society at large, our democracy, given the political context, the psychosocial trauma we've also experienced by the black majority in this country, and also those who continue to suffer from the legacy of apartheid, including triple threats of poverty, unemployment, and inequality?
Well, it would signal, I think, a number of things. One is reminding us that we haven't reckoned with our pasts effectively. And this would be another instance of a failure of our democratic institutions to enable us to do that work. But of course, we have recourse. And so for us, the struggle continues.
Is this a populist right-wing group tactic at play, in your opinion? And should the decision to not be affirmed by the Supreme Court of Appeals, what steps will you as the foundation be taking?
Well, the first part of the question is one I wouldn't want to respond to directly. For us, this is more a manifestation of deep systemic resistance to transformation work and to liberatory societal work, generally. In terms of what we will do, obviously we'd have to look at the ruling and consider our options. And of course, given our constitutional framework, there are other means for us to pursue.
All right, Vern, we're going to leave your response there. Obviously, this court case is set to take place on Wednesday. I want to invite Ernest van Zyl of the AfriForum, appealing the decision, perhaps to also give his feedback. Ernst, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Perhaps in response to what Vern has just said, as AfriForum, why did you see the need to appeal the Equality Court judgment ruling?
Good afternoon, Liesel. Yes, so AfriForum, maybe just to clear something up for people that might not be aware, the way the legal system in South Africa works, it's not like AfriForum just woke up this week and decided this week we're going to be appearing in court. We actually filed for appeal all the way back in 2019, and only now have we heard that it will be heard in court. That's why we're going to court this week. And the context surrounding that case on why we were appealing is firstly, the original case was in 2019, where the Nelson Mandela Foundation listed AfriForum in that case as a respondent, and then we accepted, seeing as if we didn't accept that listing of us as a respondent, it would be a betrayal of our principles, but at the same time, we would call ourselves a reluctant respondent. Then, of course, in that court case, it was ruled in favor of the Nelson Mandela Foundation's stance on the flag and the banning of the flag. And now AfriForum then in 2019 filed for appeal because in the end AfriForum still stands by our stance that banning of the old South African flag sets a very dangerous precedent for the future, where it starts with the easiest cases and then it gets progressively worse, where that legal precedent that is set will then very easily in the future be used to ban other types of political symbols, and easily political symbols that suit whatever the ruling party wants, whoever that ruling party in the future may be.
Okay, so you're speaking about the technicality of the word and also the issue of freedom of speech. And I just wonder then, as the matter will be presented in court on Wednesday, what new arguments are you going to be putting forth? You're looking at the issue of reconciliation, perhaps moving forward as a country, given the racial undertones that we also find well into our democracy. How is this going to foster social cohesion and unity on a broader scale?
On the one side, you have the value of social unity, and on the other side, you have the value of freedom of expression, something that our constitution protects. It's not something that's alien to our constitutional order in South Africa. So one of the main arguments in our court case is the matter of offence. So AfriForum does fight hate speech in the sense of hate speech being hateful speech towards a group or individuals that contains a call to violence or to cause physical harm. And in regards to the court case with this flag, the main argument is that offence is basically limitless, which means that if we are going to start banning symbols based on the offence that they cause, and that offence in regards to the old flag is definitely something that we acknowledge that people are offended by that flag. But if we're going to start banning symbols based on offence, it's going to open a floodgate of many other symbols that will then come under scrutiny or under call to be banned. An example would be the next logical step that we will see will definitely be calls, for example, for banning of, for example, flags like the Union Jack. You will see calls for banning other types of political symbols, maybe even calls for bans of political party symbols, like even the ANC flag. If from people, for example, that are the family members of the Marikana massacre victims might even call for the banning of a flag that represents that type of atrocity. That's the road that we're going down. And that's the legal precedent that's being set with this court case, opens the doors for all those types of bannings, all those types of attacks on symbols. And that's not a momentum that you're going to be able to stop. It's not going to stop with the old South African flag. It's going to continue then to the next symbol and the next symbol and the next symbol, and it's going to get progressively more difficult to rationalize why the symbols that are being banned or to explain why they're being banned, because every symbol will be based on the fact that someone will say, but that symbol is offensive to me from in my experience or from your perspective. And that's the slippery
Ernest,
slope that's
I hear you loud and clear there. Obviously, we have to also look at the context that this symbol finds itself in, perhaps what it also incites, given the psychosocial trauma and the history of the country. And so in lieu of what you're saying, yes, you're saying that, there's the issue of symbols, but look, I wonder, how does this then differ from your previous court challenge on Shoot the Boer song? If permitted to display the flag, do you not also then want to use the K word? And then if not, what's the difference in symbolism?
When it comes to a case like the Dubela Ibunu or Kill the Boer song, that is a song that very directly calls for violence. The lyrics are literally kill. That is a call to violence. That is the difference when it comes to hate speech and offensive speech. Hate speech contains a direct call to violence or a direct call to cause physical harm. That is why we are taking the matter of the Kill the Boer song to court. And the difference there is I can very easily pledge that I will never wave the old South African flag. But singers of the song Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, like Julius Malema, can't even pledge under oath that he will never call for the slaughtering of white people. That's the difference.
Okay, but also there's a secret language that comes with the visualization of symbols used. And obviously it might not be spoken, but it obviously represents something that people who understand what that symbolism means can, relate to, can understand, and also can incite, emotions that has come forth, especially from the majority of the black population that face the trauma of what, apartheid incited and imposed upon them. So I think just also to look at that in the spirit of social cohesion, do you care about what it does to the victims of apartheid? Do you care how people feel?
Yes, absolutely. I care about how people feel, about how symbols makes them feel. I don't want anyone just to be trivially insulted on a daily basis. I don't want people's opinion. I don't find any pleasure in seeing people's feelings hurt or people experiencing emotional trauma. But that is the thing is, there are many things that cause emotional trauma, many things that cause harm in that regard. When it comes to something, for example, the denial of farm murders, me coming from a farming community, when a politician or even the president of the country goes on a national platform and says there are no murdering of farmers or white farmers in South Africa, that's something that causes me immense trauma emotionally as someone that comes from a farming community, that knows farmers, that knows people, that have talked to the victims and the survivors of attacks on farms and the family members of victims of farm murders. But that is just an example of the very wide spectrum of emotional damage and emotional trauma that can be that can be brought to the fore through speech and through symbols, and that's a reality. I don't think AfriForum has ever denied that symbols like the old South African flag definitely causes emotional trauma to people. But at the same time, there are many things that cause emotional trauma to many different people for many different reasons. And that's why when we start setting this precedent that when something causes emotional trauma, it needs to be banned, other things are going to then have to be banned as well. Farm murder denialism, one of them will then be an example. If the old South African flag is banned for that, then we need to ban things like farm murder denialism as well.
But it's obviously also not they're not calling for the total ban. It can be used for educational purposes and academic purposes as well. So I just want to bring Vern into the conversation once again as we wrap this up. I mean, it's obviously set to take place on Wednesday. Vern, in view of what Ernst has just spoken about, really emphasizing the need for symbolism. I'm obviously countering to ask him if we're going to look at the apartheid flag as a symbol of inciting, violence and what was imposed on the majority black people of South Africa. You've obviously also looking at the use of the K word. Then you're looking at, shoot the boer songs that they've also come to challenge. I wonder what your response is, just in conclusion, before I bring Vern back into the conversation.
Liesel, I would agree with Ernst that it's critical that we distinguish between, on the one hand, what causes offense, and on the other, what causes damage and trauma. I think what Ernst has just demonstrated and what he said is that he and AfriForum can make that distinction. But they only care about damage and trauma that occurs to particular people. And I think what we're trying to say is that the principle is we need to understand that where we are causing damage to one another in our society, where we are causing trauma or a re-traumatization, this is dangerous, it's unacceptable, and because of the Equality Court ruling, it is illegal. I'll stop there, Liesel.
All right, Vern, in conclusion, should you not be successful with the appeal, would you put the matter to rest? What other options are you going to explore?
Well, there are legal options, there are other options. We would have to look at the ruling and decide what would be the most appropriate.
All right, Ernst, just in conclusion, on the back of that, should you not be successful with the appeal, what are you going to do to put the matter to rest?
Well, then we will go back to our legal team and see what the next step will be. Just to respond to something that Vern said very briefly, I don't think it's very charitable or even fair to say that you clearly see what is going on within the souls or the minds of someone else and saying that they are cold and do not experience or have empathy for emotion of other people. I think that is a very unfair statement to make. And I think the very case where you see AfriForum doesn't display the old flag, we don't wave it. We are fighting for a principle here, something that goes very deeply into very deep values here that this country is built on. And the thing is about the old flag and it being waved, the very fact that people have to go back decades to find photos of people waving the flag and have to pretend on social media like it's recent and then having to be exposed as liars shows that this is not about waving the flag. This is about a principle. This is about the principle of freedom of expression and not banning political symbols just because they cause offense, because that then leads to many other symbols that will then be banned in the future. So I think that proves that this is not about AfriForum's desire to wave the flag, but rather about a very core principle at the heart of not just AfriForum, but at the heart of South Africa's constitutional order itself.
All right, we're going to leave the conversation there. Vern Harris, Head of Leadership Development at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as Ernst van Zyl, representing AfriForum, again chatting to us about the appeal that's set to take place on Wednesday, again discussing the issues of the public display or the keeping of the apartheid flag at home. Does this constitute a hate speech? That court case gets underway this week. We will take a quick ad break and continue with more news and updates on the other side. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. In other news, frontline workers, nurses especially, will be marking on Thursday World Nurses Day. This year, the day will be marked under the theme of Voice to Lead, Invest in Nursing and Respect the Rights to Secure Global Health. Here at home, the nurses are faced with many challenges affecting the health sector, such as the working conditions, infrastructure, and others. Perhaps for more, we are joined by Lerato Mthunzi, General Secretary of the Young Nurses Indaba Union, and Bongani Mazibuko, Gauteng Provincial Secretary from the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa. A very good afternoon to the both of you. Let me start off with you, Bongani. Obviously, looking at the impact that the last 2 years of the outbreak of COVID-19 has had on the, on the frontline workers as a whole, especially in the health sector. What has kept, you as a sector going through these 2 years? How significant is this day?
Hello.
Hi, Lerato and Bongani. It's Liesl, obviously joining you on the SABC, and you're live currently. I'm going to start with Bongani. I'm looking at the impact that the pandemic has had on frontline workers, particularly in the healthcare sector. And I wonder, how this has impacted you, how you have managed to keep going as a sector. How significant is this day for you on Thursday? Bongani, you're welcome to start.
Thanks. Thanks again. Good afternoon. This is a very significant day for us as nurses. Thank you, Lisa. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. You're welcome to proceed.
Yes, because this is the one time. That seems. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Bongani, we can hear you. You are live on the SABC. You're obviously just speaking to us about the challenges that you faced during this COVID-19 pandemic that's exacerbated the conditions of frontline workers, especially in the healthcare sector. And in lieu of this, how important is International Nurses Day on Thursday?
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. This is a very important day for us as nurses because this is actually the one time during the year where everybody gets to acknowledge and recognize the work that nurses do and how important nurses are to the healthcare system. And the past 2 years, as you've said, have not been simple. They've been quite difficult, particularly for us as frontline workers having to face COVID head on and all the other challenges that came with COVID. But the one thing that one must say is that COVID in itself, and when it came about, it also actually exposed some of the things that we've been highlighting when talking about the challenges within the nursing fraternity and within the healthcare sector. One of those being shortage of nurses, shortage of resources, and so forth. And now that the state of disaster has been stopped, some of those challenges are being exposed even more. Because you can, as you would know, that some of the people who are employed on COVID contracts have been let go, particularly in Gauteng, where we are. And that is posing a serious challenge to the healthcare system and service delivery of the people.
Well, Gardee, on the back of what you're just saying, as we try to get Lerato back on the line, obviously this past week there was a march, that was led demanding better working conditions and also, addressing the issue of the shortage of workers amongst other issues. I wonder, what has been the response to date given those demands? And in terms of what's needed from here and two, what are some of the steps you're going to be taking forward to ensure that those rights come into fruition?
Well, I think at this stage, we really need the public, the citizens of this country, to come in on board and actually recognize and also speak for nurses as well. Because as a union, we've been speaking to the government and we've been speaking particularly here in Gauteng. There's a lot of challenges, and the administration of Gauteng Health, sometimes one would even go to an extent of saying that is not committed to bringing changes and improving the lives of nurses. But we need to come together and make sure that we hold the government accountable. We need to make sure that the nursing colleges, the intake is improved. We've had an intake of nurses in the past 2 years being about 200 for GCON, which is the Gauteng Nursing College as a whole. And the nurses that are leaving the system, there's an exodus of nurses that are leaving the system. And now with people being terminated, you've also got a number of nurses that are leaving the country, which is part of what we are talking about for International Nurses Day. It's causing a brain drain for the nursing for the nursing profession in the country. And as you would know, South African nurses are rated amongst the best in the country and in the world. And that means that they are targeted by countries like UK, Canada, and so forth. Now, that is another problem that we'll be looking at that needs us to be able to say, how do we encourage people to stay in the country, and how do we get the government to give those people employment? Because we need these nurses in order for the government to roll out NHI. Successfully.
Well, speaking of which, as we, edge closer to Thursday to celebrate International Workers' Day, how far do you think you still have to go in fighting these battles? And as Denosa, how do you intend to mark this day on Thursday?
On Thursday, we'll be having a hybrid celebration at the CSIR, where we'll be having a few nurses at CSR in attendance, but we are hoping, and we've spoken to all the other provinces, people will be connecting virtually in order to interact with the speakers and so forth, of the people who will be hosting the event. And what we are highlighting, the message that we are sending is that we want our nurses to be able to serve the country and serve the people of South Africa. In South Africa, we are hoping that the government will also look into it, addressing the issue of community service and the nursing council in particular. We've got community service nurses, people who are compelled to come and serve the country, and then after they've completed their community service, the same government says, we don't have it for you. So now those people are then tempted and they end up taking space elsewhere. And it doesn't make sense that the government would train people because there is a need for nurses, and then those very same people are then told to go and look for a job in the private sector. So it means the public service is actually training for the private sector. Doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, Bongani. Actually been told that Lerato is also on the line. Lerato Mtunzi is the General Secretary of the Young Nurses in Dabe Union. Let me invite you into the conversation. We've heard what Bongani has echoed, highlighting the challenges that the health sector faces, particularly as the COVID-19 pandemic has, exacerbated some of the issues. I wonder, as a young nurse who is faced with ensuring that you offer the best health care, can you walk us through, paint a picture, if you like, of your daily working environment? What are some of the highlights, but also the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis? Lerato, if you can hear me, you're welcome to respond. All right. We seem to be having some technical issues there. I think we're going to leave the conversation there. Bongani, thank you very much for your time. Bongani Mazibuko is the Gauteng Provincial Secretary from the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, DENOSA. We were trying to speak to Lerato Mthunzi, the General Secretary of the Young Nurses Indaba Union, about the challenges that they face within the sector and the profession at large, given that we're going to celebrate World Nurses Day on Thursday. In other news now, Western Cape High Court judge, let me see what other stories we have on the lineup for now. Obviously, taking a look on the head, Western Cape High Court Judge President John Hlophe will file for leave to appeal the judgment delivered by the High Court in Johannesburg. Hlophe's lawyers say that the case is important for the public's confidence in the judiciary as well as the rule of law as a whole. The judgment does not reflect the established jurisprudence on the constitutional and legal issues raised by the parties. Mercedes Besant, in fact, filed this report. Take a look.
The majority of the Judicial Service Commission resolved in August last year that the National Assembly should impeach Hlophe for gross misconduct, but Hlophe took the decision on judicial review. His application was dismissed.
The judgment of the High Court in the matter of Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe clearly vindicates the process and the decision of the Judicial Service Commission, which concluded that he is guilty of gross misconduct. This is evidenced by the reasoning of the court to all the challenges which Judge President Hlophe made in his review application.
Hlophe's request for the court to order the National Assembly to reconduct this misconduct inquiry was also dismissed.
The implication of this judgment is that the National Assembly is well within its rights to proceed with the impeachment process. This is unless Judge President Hlophe were to file an appeal supported by an interdict against the National Assembly proceeding, or reaching agreement with the National Assembly not to proceed until the appeal is finalized. However, judging by the reasoning of the court and the extensive reasons provided by the court, it seems that any appeal or any process that's put on hold, the impeachment process, will simply be a delay of the inevitable impeachment.
But Hlophe's lawyers say the public is entitled to a judgment that accurately interprets the law and faithfully adheres to the established constitutional principles. They say this includes judicial precedents and the correct approach to interpreting the Constitution. Hlophe has 15 days within which to file for leave to appeal the judgment. Mercedes Besant, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, just like that, we've come to the end of the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, for this week. We'll be back, of course, next week to take a look at some of the top stories making headlines. For now, though, we leave it there. For myself and the rest of the team, until next time, it's goodbye for now. Do stay safe.